James Cleverly in Rwanda. What do you make of this scheme?
I despair, if I'm honest. You know, the government's spoken about Rwanda now for 18 months or so. It's not yielded any tangible benefits for anyone. They've spent the best part of £140 million. We don't know how much more they're going to spend on this. You know, there's an easy solution. You create safe and legal routes and you invest in more staff to clear the backlog. The reason they don't want to do that is they want to create a culture war over some of the most marginalised and vulnerable people, not just in the UK, but on the planet. It's all just a bit despicable, and I'm frankly fed up of it, and I think most of the viewers probably will be too.
I guess the government would say this is about trying to put people off making the application in the first place, right? And so many people would say, look, the boats are still coming, it's dangerous for people on them, surely something must be done to try and prevent people making that crossing.
Yeah, and the solution to that is to create safe and legal routes so that you can deal with this problem if it is indeed perceived as a problem at source.
Would that mean that every country in the world would have a safe and legal route to claim asylum in the UK?
I think there's an expectation that the UK should be engaging with partners right across the world to try and lessen the impact on these people. And if you can do that in collaboration with others, you should. You know, this plan was botched up by Boris Johnson to try and distract from all the problems that exist. It's not solved anything. It's not going to fix the problem if indeed people perceive there to be a problem. Let's get safe and legal routes and let's make sure we clear the backlog by investing in staff.
I know it's very important to make sure it's clear when we're talking about legal and illegal migration, but we've been talking an awful lot about legal migration as well recently. Does Scotland need more migration?
Absolutely. And, you know, the statement that the Home Secretary gave yesterday, for me, was absurd. It was ignorant and it's going to lead to economic damage. And that's because of the fact that we know that migrants contribute more to the Treasury than they take out. We know that for every 1% increase in the workforce that's made up of migrants, we see a commensurate 1.2% to 3% increase in productivity. And having more people of working age in the economy is a good thing. Scotland has not just an ageing population, but has a declining population and a declining working age population. We need migrants in Scotland. It's economically beneficial to us. For our public services, it's good, and socially and culturally it enriches us.
What would be the right level of migration then, of net migration?
So what I would like to see is an evidence-based approach which looks at the economic situation that we face, that we also take into account the needs of our public sector, which of course is heavily reliant upon migrant workers, our care sector, our hospitals and indeed our schools, and we make sure that we have a system which is built around that.
OK, so taking all that into account now, what would be the correct level of net migration?
Well, for Scotland, I don't think it's for me to put in place an arbitrary target for a hypothetical at this moment in time, but what I would like to see is greater migration to Scotland. I think that would be a good thing. It would help our public services, it would help our economy, and most importantly of all, it would enrich our communities. And I think for most people in Scotland, they would agree with that, and the numbers would back that up.
It's interesting you talk about enriching communities. Do you think that's part of the debate then?
I think there's been an overriding sense of denial in relation to the benefits of migration for a long time. I think it fueled Brexit.
Do you think it's a bit racist and all that?
I think it wouldn't be for me to suggest what other people's views may be in relation to migrants coming over, but there's definitely a distrust and a lot of misinformation about migrants. I'm proudly in favour of increased migration, and I wish that other politicians, both in the Conservative Party and indeed in the Labour leadership, agreed. I
want to talk to you about education, because we had the PISA results out today that measures worldwide education standards, looking at 700,000 15-year-olds. Look, there'll always be criticism of different methods, but this is seen as a very important piece of work. And the report shows a long-term decline in standards in Scotland. Kids in Scotland lagging behind kids in England, particularly in maths and science. Does the SNP take responsibility for that?
So of course, the decline in Scottish education, if indeed there is one which the figures would indicate there's a problem in that regard, much predates the Scottish National Party. Indeed, it goes back to the Labour and Lib Dem coalition, which was before us. So we obviously have a structural problem within
on your watch as well. It's not like the SNP came to power in Scotland, like, you know, a couple of months ago.
Obviously. And, you know, every effort is being made to improve educational attainment in Scotland. Of course, across these aisles, there's a mixed picture. I think that in relation to some of our comparators with England, we may well be behind, but in relation to Wales, we may well be in front.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be looking at it in that perspective. I think what we should be doing is...
Would you like to apologise to parents who might feel a bit let down if they look at this?
I think what we should be doing is focusing on making sure that kids have the best opportunities in life. In Scotland, we have an education system that we're proud of, our world-leading. 5 of the top 20 universities in the world are in Scotland. We have free higher education for university as well, in stark contrast to elsewhere on these isles. 95% of young people in Scotland go to positive destinations. So that is a good story as well.
Some people say part of the issue is with the curriculum in Scotland. Like, here's Lindsay Patterson, the Professor of Education Policy at Edinburgh University. He says the decline corresponds with the implementation of the curriculum for excellence introduced by the SNP. The longer-term decline may be seen clearly for Scotland if we go back a full decade to 2012. 2012 is around the time that the Scottish curriculum for excellence was beginning to impinge significantly on children's learning. Well, should you scrap it?
Well, of course, it's my understanding that it predates the introduction of the curriculum for excellence, and I think we need to reflect on that and be a little bit cautious about the figures that are and the dates that are getting thrown around here.
That's a decade. It's a decade.
But of course, as it stands, 95...
You can't blame it on stuff that happened over a decade ago.
I'll talk about what's happening now. 95% of young people in Scotland go on to positive destinations. So that means they go on to work, it means they go to college, it means they go to apprenticeships, it means they go to university, which of course in Scotland for young Scots is free. That's a positive thing. 95% of young people go into positive destinations. That's something that we should be proud of. It's something I'm very proud of. Of course, there's much more work to be done and we're all committed to that. But meantime, I think we're doing as well as we possibly can.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Stephen Flynn there.